Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me again today. We thought we'd have another session speaking a little bit more about fruit trees and just getting a nice topic for you guys to use in the future. If you've seen a Kelpak talk before, you'll see some new concepts today. We have learned a lot about the product, especially in the form of bioassays and the effect it has on different plant parts that we did not previously understood well. So I'm excited to show you this today. A little bit about Kelpak. Kelpak was founded in 1978. Sanctions at the time prohibited sales into the other countries. So up to that point, all 90% of the sales went into South Africa and our close neighbors. And in 1994, when the sanctions were lifted, we started exporting the product. And currently, we are in more than 80 countries. So we have expanded quite a bit. South Africa is still our single country with this, that uses the most Kelpak, but we are in most countries at the moment, or in 80 countries at the moment, and for which America is a very important market for us. Sales started in California, especially in almonds, table grapes, walnuts, pistachios, but we have slowly been going to more of the row crops and other fruits and vegetables, and QLF has been quite a pivotal partner in this, and we have done some magnificent work together, especially in soybean and in corn, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Now, we use a seaweed called Eclonia maxima. It only grows in one spot in the entire world, on our west coast of South Africa. So you see the little globe on the left-hand side of the screen. The dark section there is South Africa. And then I've highlighted the tip of Africa, which is called Kelpak Gullis, right at the bottom, and that's the most southern point of Africa. To the west of that is where the seaweed grows, up to the Namibian border, so that's the next country up, and it only grows on the coastline of this stretch of coast. Now, the reason for this is because it's quite close to the Antarctic. Cold water wells up from the South Pole. So as I was saying, it only grows on this west coast because cold, nutrient-rich waters wells up from the Antarctic, bringing with it a lot of nutrients, and the seaweed can exploit these nutrients and grow very rapidly. And that's why we use the seaweed, or Eclonia maxima. It's called the giant brown kelp, and there's some reports showing that it can grow at 5 inches in a week. So for a big kelp plant, if you want to call it that, it can grow rapidly. Because it grows rapidly, we can exploit all the interesting bioactive compounds that allows this growth, and it has a profound effect on plants. So that's why we use Eclonia maxima. It grows in kelp forest, and this is our harvesting site. The name there in my Afrikaans language is called Soetwater, or sweet water, and it's a nature conservancy where we have we are allowed to harvest for a 6-mile up the coastline. From the lighthouse up the coast, we are allowed to harvest for an area of about 6 miles. So we have been harvesting here for close to 47 years, and every year it grows back, and it's a completely renewable source. So there's no danger of running out. There's actually indications that as we harvest, as the spores germinate and grow, the stand actually gets more dense. So we have a very nice reusable or renewable resource. What it looks like, this is the fronds or the leaves floating on top of the water, and you can just see pieces of stems sticking out, and they grow in these forests. So you can imagine if we clear an area, if we harvest a spot, what happens? It's a typical forest dynamic that also occurs in the seaweed forest. As soon as light penetrates the water, spores germinate. Remember, it's not a classical plant, it's a seaweed, so it's got like an algae, so it's got spores germinating. Thousands of them germinate, they grow rapidly to fill the space, competing with each other, and only the toughest survive and the fastest growing ones survive. So within an 18 to 24 month period, it fills that space and we can harvest it again. So we try to maintain a seaweed age of about 24 months. In doing so, we can make sure that the phenological stage of the seaweed is the same. If it's all the same age, its chemical profile and its nutrients that it has is also the same, so we can provide a consistent product, and that's very important to us. Now, we are the only company that harvests by hand. You can see there a scuba diver with a sickle, and he's cutting seaweed. Now, at the base where he's cutting, the tube is closed, but just above his hand, the stem opens up into a cavity, and it is positively buoyant, meaning it will float to the top and can be collected by divers. People on a boat. So one seaweed stem like that weighs about 60 pounds. So in 30 minutes, they can get enough to process or to take back to the shore. And it's all done by hand. This is what it looks like. There's two boats on the water. You can see the seaweed lying on the top. It's loaded into the boat. It's taken to the shoreline, and it's picked up first by a front end loader, but then placed onto a truck, and it's immediately taken to our facility, which is about a 10-minute drive away. So we endeavor to process the seaweed as fresh as possible, as quickly as possible, to maintain the delicate compounds inside the seaweed. And that's very important when selecting a seaweed source. So, as I've mentioned, the source is very important. So specifically, the conditions as the water temperature, the wave action, the more waves there are, certain defensive compounds accumulate in the seaweed that has an interesting effect on plants. So that's very important. And it's also important how you harvest it, if it's fresh or if you just picked it up from the beach. Seaweed can degrade very quickly. So we want it as fresh as possible. Then also it's important to look at the ratio of the stems to the leaves that is used. If you only use leaves, you cannot put enough seaweed in the product. So there needs to be a specific ratio. And then probably the most important today is the extraction process. Lots of companies use different methods, especially if you look at an Acadian type product. You've seen that before. They make it from a seaweed, Staphylococcus nodosum, but they use alkaline hydrolysis. So what this means is they take an alkaline solution of potassium hydroxide at a pH of about 10 or more, and then they apply it to the seaweed, and it breaks down the cell walls. So in doing so, they do release the cellular content, but at a high pH. So many of your active compounds will start dropping hydrogen atoms, become negatively charged, and they start binding to amino acids and carbohydrates, so they become inactive. So it's important to maintain a lower pH and extract the seaweed in a way that maintains the delicate biological compounds in the product. And lastly, some companies also add nutrients and preservatives, strong preservatives that will also degrade these compounds. But at the end of the day, a good question to ask before you buy a seaweed product is how much seaweed does it contain? A very important question, especially if you see that companies are adding a lot of fertilizer to their product. It's got a higher than normal NPK value. Then you have to ask the question, why? Why do they not only use a pure seaweed? Why is it necessary to add a fertilizer source that may give you an effect, but it's probably not from the biological compounds in the seaweed? So the process that we use is called the cold cellular burst extraction process, and it's only based on pressure differential extraction. So what we do is we take seaweed mince, we cut it up very fine, and we place it under a high pressure, and we release that pressure rapidly, and those cells which are under pressure expands, and as they expand too quickly, they burst. But not only the cell membranes, but also the organelles inside. So we explode the cells and get all the growth biological compounds within. And so in a holistic way and then in a safe way, without damaging these compounds, we can extract the cellular liquid. And that is one of the reason Kelpak is such an amazing product. So we maintain a low pH, basically the pH of the seaweed itself, the pH that plants can absorb the nutrients and absorb these biological compounds, and basically in the ratio that they would come, they are existing in nature. So a very important feature. No chemicals, no heat, freezing, or dehydration. So it's really one of the best extraction processes out there. Now, when you look at two different seaweeds, on the left, at the top left, you see Eclonia maxima, that is a seaweed Kelpak is made of. And then on the right, you've got a Scaphylum nodosum. And just by its morphology, you can see that the seaweeds look completely different. So you would accept then that it's possible that it is as easy to compare Eclonia maxima to a Scaphylum nodosum by comparing grapes to oranges and a final product like wine and fruit juice. The products can be completely different. And we've seen this. We know the chemical makeup of the Scaphylum nodosum product is different from a Kelpak, and its functions on a plant is different. Now, it'll be interesting for you to note that when you compare a Eclonia maxima species, so you can compare the same seaweed species, you compare the same grapes, but the product at the end of the day can be compared, it can be like comparing wine to vinegar. Same source material, completely different products. Now, of course, we believe Kelpak is on the wine side, right? We know we've got a very good product. To illustrate how products made from the same seaweed source or the same species can be different, we looked at alginate content. Now, alginate is the gel compound in seaweed. It gives its flexibility in the seawater, and if you've ever picked up seaweed or algae, it's slimy, right? So when we look at alginate levels in different seaweeds, these are at the bottom. You've got Kelpak on the left, and some of the competitors using the same seaweed source, claiming it's exactly the same product. But on these levels, you can see that mostly they can be up to 10 times less seaweed or 10 times less of these compounds. Not 10% less, 10 times. You know, it's a big difference. So one needs to be careful before you select a product. You really need to look at high quality products when you consider seaweeds. Now, if you've ever experienced with seaweed products, 30 years ago, the only thing everyone talked about is a cytokinin-like response and an auxin-like response. And those are illustrated by the small circles. So cytokinins are more associated with leaf growth, auxins are associated with root growth. And there was reason for this. When you spray Kelpak on a crop, you see a flush of roots growing. And everyone's thoughts went immediately, oh, this must be the PGR auxin because it stimulates rooting. And the same went for the Scaphylum nodosum. When they sprayed it and they saw more leaf growth, they thought, okay, this might be cytokinins. And we have all now realized it is not these compounds. If you look at the range there, it's between auxins, and this is not only for Kelpak, but every product I could get my hands on, between 0.06 to 2 micrograms per liter. Now, if you consider that we dilute this further in a spray solution from 100 to 200 times, so you divide it by 200, that value goes closer to nanograms, and that's a very, very small amount. So we know today that the effect that we get from Kelpak are not based on the classic PGRs, but rather we base it on the compounds in the bigger circles. for rooting, we know that we've got a lot of fluorotannins. It's a compound that was first discovered and investigated for its effect on the preventing or slowing down Alzheimer's disease. And only in the last 10 years, we thought, okay, let's apply this to a plant. And what we saw is that it stimulates rooting in an amazing way. Very similar to auxins, but it's not a classic PGR. And you can see it occurs at 2.8 milligrams per liter. So it's more than enough to elicit a response in the plant when we dilute Kelpak. And I'll illustrate that in a moment. Similarly, we found that polyamines are also very important, and they are associated with one of the biggest claims seaweed products make is to mitigate stress. And polyamines occur at very high levels in Kelpak. You can see there at 4 milligrams, sometimes up to 8 milligrams per liter. Now, when a stress in a plant goes up, a plant is placed under stress, the polyamine levels increase also. So they are associated with stress, and when scientists put a plant under stress and they spray it with a polyamine solution, a pure polyamine solution, they find that that plant can deal with the stress and a bit better, and it helps to mitigate the stress in the plant. And that's one of the big claims for seaweed products, and we base it on this compound. There are other things, but for discussion for today, we are going to focus on those two circles. Now, just to show you that I'm not making these things up, this is an article, a scientific article that was published by author Wally and his colleagues in 2013. And what they did is they looked at different seaweeds and quantified the auxins, abscisic acid, and cytokinins in these products. So classical PGRs. On the left-hand side, you'll see A and E, Ascophyllum nodosum extract from Canada, from France, from America, from Ireland, from Norway. They listed 2 Eclonia maximas. We presume one of us is ours and one of our competitors, a Macrocystis, Dervelia, and Sargassum. So those are the main seaweeds that are used to make commercial products. What you'll see is that the auxin levels are, they've listed some numbers there. At the top, you'll note it's in nanogram per gram dry weight. So a nanogram is basically 10 to the power of -9 of a gram. So take a gram divided by 1,000,000 and you get to a nanogram. So very low levels, and ND means not detected. So what this table summarizes is says that it doesn't matter really what seaweed you're looking at. None of them really contains any auxins or cytokinins that can affect plant growth. So basically what I just said, it must be other things. And one of those other things is called fluorotannin. As I said, Ecol was the first one discovered, and you can see it there in the background. And it was called Ecol, being discovered in Eclonia maxima for the first time. And they are limited to the brown seaweed, interestingly enough. I said that they help with seed germination, but they have other functions like protecting auxins from breaking down in the plant. They stimulate pollen and shoot growth, and they have a host of interesting effects in starting the metabolism of seeds, etc. To illustrate this, we extracted pure Ecol or fluorotannin from Kelpak, and we took this product off this sample and we applied it to seeds directly. The scientific term there is the concentration of Ecol was 10⁻⁶ molar, a very small concentration, but basically if you would dilute Kelpak and you apply it to the seed, that is the amount of Ecol in Kelpak. So that is this is the contributing part of Ecol in the Kelpak extract at that rate. What can you see? Lots more roots. Those seedlings are bigger because you've got more roots, right? So that makes sense. On the right-hand side, they quantified it. So the orange bars were Kelpak, 2 fluorotannins, Ecol and fluoroglucinol, and then in black was the control. And you can see at a 95% confidence level, not only Kelpak, but all these 2 pure compounds significantly improve the number of roots and also the seedling weight. So scientifically proven that this compound really stimulates rooting in a profound way. Then we spoke about polyamines. I mentioned their effect on stress. If you have some time and you find this interesting, go Google polyamines and the role in stress in plants, and you'll find a host of scientific studies illustrating this. They also have an effect on flower bud initiation, excuse me, and pollen germination. They help fruit grow bigger, and they also help stabilize membranes. So a very interesting group of compounds that we found at higher concentrations in Kelpak. Again, we looked at different seaweed products, not only Aclonium maxima, but also Scophyllum nodosum. And you'll see that on average, we have, again, a large amount of polyamines and none of the others have it. And that could speak to the way our seaweed grows in rough tidal conditions with that stress accumulating this compound in the seaweed, and also maybe in how we treat our seaweed product and how quickly we make the extract. But nevertheless, we have a lot of it, and we see the effect of it in plants. So an illustration of this is in 2019, I was in Egypt, and I took this photo of chilies, and you can see on the right-hand side, when they were transplanted, these seedlings were dipped in a Kelpak solution, and 30 days later, you could see that they were still, in the heat of the summer sun, they were still photosynthesizing, they were not wilted. Where Kelpak was not treated, they would start wilting. And that's the effect of Kelpak. Of course, it would have helped stimulate their roots, but we also found that it could be the effect it has on stress. Now, for the European Union, we need to prove that a seaweed product like Kelpak can prevent stress. And it's a very important claim to make, especially in that market. And to do this, I commissioned a university to develop a bioassay for us and to measure the effect of Kelpak on stress. To do this, we got wheat seeds. We treated them either with water or with Kelpak. And then we placed them on filter paper soaked in salt. And from the picture, you can see the effect of Kelpak after 10 days. So you can see mostly for the control and for Kelpak, they germinated. But you can just see the difference in growth, the length of the root, and the fact that are actually leaves starting to develop on the plates. So it really helps those seeds to overcome that stress. So I said, okay, this picture is great. So how do we quantify this? So we started looking at different salt concentrations. From at the top left, you'll see a control plus 400 millimolar salt. So it's a scientific nomenclature for high salt, in green, medium salt, and in yellow, lower salt. And then the bottom three bars, you'll see Kelpak was added at 0.5%. So the seeds was treated with Kelpak and then placed on the tissue paper or the filter paper. And you could see at the high salt, germination was improved from 27 to 43%, at medium salt from 52 to 72, and then in low salt from 80 to 88%. So just to illustrate the effect that Kelpak has just on germination in adverse conditions, especially if you consider if you put a fertilizer on top of your seed and there's a little bit of salt damage, Kelpak can help with that. Another bioassay to illustrate the effect of Kelpak and what it does started with a mung bean rooting bioassay. Now this is an assay that looks at auxin-like activity or the effect of a compound on root growth, right? This was Kelpak's main claim to fame. And when you apply Kelpak to a seedling, that's the first thing you'll see is root growth. So it is done by growing mung beans for 10 days in trays, and after 10 days, the roots are cut off, and then they are placed in vials containing a test solution. This test solution can be a pure PGR or a Kelpak solution that we want to test. And those little hypocotyls, so the roots were removed, they were placed in a solution, and then they were rinsed. And after 3 or 4 hours, they are placed in distilled water, and you basically observe the number of roots that form. And based on that number of roots, you can say, okay, this solution stimulates so many roots, and you can draw some comparison. So typically for Kelpak on the left, this is the rooting curve that you'll follow. On the left there, 0 is the water control, producing about 7 roots. And as the concentration of Kelpak increases, the number of roots go up. And this graph we've produced month after month for the last 30 years, looking at the growth of Kelpak on mung beans. Now looking at our competitor using the same seaweed, it's called Afrikelp. You can see, although they claim the same seaweed or the same concentration, the effect is not the same. On the far right is Acadian. It's not known to produce rooting in the same way as Kelpak, and that is fine. But you can see that it still produces some roots, but it's not the same as Kelpak for rooting. So we've always known that Kelpak stimulates rooting. What we did not know, and this is something we've learned quite recently, is although we knew that Kelpak can stimulate photosynthesis and leaf growth, that was not the main claim for Kelpak. We always knew it produced roots. So a friend of mine helped me to develop this bioassay. It's called the cucumber cotyledon expansion bioassay. And as the name suggests, it takes cucumber cotyledons, so the first fleshy leaves of the seedling, and under the dark light or under green light, so green light does not affect photosynthesis or growth. So under green light in the dark, they cut off these leaves, place them on a filter paper with a certain solution treated onto the filter paper, and then after you introduce it back into light, you can measure and weigh how quickly these leaves expand and grow. So you can see the effect of the solution on these leaves when it's introduced back into light. So when you look at the growth, on the left there you'll have a control, and you can see the specific growth rate grams per day on the y-axis. The first 4 bars, the red line is just a guide to show you the level of the control. So the first 4 bars is auxins. Auxins are not associated with leaf growth, so this is expected. They have even a negative effect on leaf growth. This was expected. When you add cytokinins, they are known to stimulate foliar growth, and you can say, okay, again, expected, much higher than the control for the specific growth per day. When you look at Kelpak, you see, okay, Kelpak is not even just the same as cytokinins, but it even stimulates leaf growth more. So let's open our mind about the product. We've known that it stimulates rooting, but now we see, okay, it also stimulates foliar growth. Something that you might not know if you're not into the fruit market is that if you produce table grapes, a lot of PGRs are used to increase the size of the berries, and this is true for most varieties. So they would spray gibberellic acid. So gibberellic acid is a PGR that increases the cell size of cells. They make fruit big, but sometimes they have some, if you spray it at too high concentration, they can actually have some negative effects associated with it, like thinning of membranes, and then the fruit can be bruised. Sometimes it reduces the taste, making the fruit watery, and it can reduce fruitfulness in the vine the next year. So what we've been doing, especially on this variety, it's called Autumn Crisp. And what the farmer there on the right has done is they spray these grapes with only Kelpak. Now, this was a practice that has been always done with gibberellic acid, but they have gone and sprayed more and more Kelpak and reducing the gibberellic acid load, and thereby attaining this fruit size. And in this picture, for this Autumn Crisp variety, these table grapes were produced without gibberellic acid. So now I'm telling you, so Kelpak has an auxin-like effect to produce roots, a cytokinin-like effect to produce leaves, and then a gibberellic acid effect to increase fruit size. So what we are learning is that Kelpak is almost like a general growth stimulant. All it depends on is when you apply it. So another aspect of Kelpak that is very interesting for us, yes, we applied early on seedlings and on seeds to stimulate root growth, but it has a very profound effect when you spray it on flowers to set more fruit. And to quote, I took a snippet of a paper here, and I'll just read the highlighted sections to you. It says, polyamines play vital multi-regulatory roles in most, if not all, growth and development related processes in citrus plants, but you can just say all plants. They also play an important role in reproductive development during flowering and fruit set. So in this paper by Killeney and Nihala in 2020, we found that, and this is a recent publication, showing that when flowers develop, they need high polyamine levels. So the most common polyamine in Kelpak is putrescine and spermine. And in the picture here, you can see right when flowering starts, there's high putrescine and spermine in orange. And as it develops, it reduces to about stage 2 there, which is fruit set. Now cells are dividing rapidly again. You're making more and more cells to form a fruit, and your need for putrescine and for spermine increases again. So you can see in the blue part of the graph there, it increases slowly in concentration. Now for the last 30 years, we developed by trial and error the correct time to apply Kelpak in citrus fruit. And we came up with, over 30 years, is to apply it as flowering, as fruit set, at stage 4 there, and again at stage 5. So we applied 4 times during flower development, just to see in 2020 that polyamines are important at the stages. What we know is we have a lot of polyamines. So we've been adding these compounds back into the flowers and supplementing the dose and improving fruit set. And this is a typical result we see in citrus. We set significantly more fruit in citrus. So that was quite interesting. So at some stage, because we knew we stimulate fruit set, we had to look at pollen. Now, pollen can be grown under a microscope with a solution containing calcium, magnesium, and boron, and some sugar. And the solution on this slide, on the left and the right, was exactly the same, except on the right-hand side, I added some Kelpak. Now, let me just... So I left this pollen in the solution for 20 minutes and recorded the growth for another 40 minutes. So growth within 1 hour. And you'll see that the pollen germinates very quickly. So they grow rapidly, the pollen tubes, and some pollen grains even produce 2 pollen tubes if you look closely. These are binucleate pollen, so 2 nuclei. So they have the ability to produce 2 pollen tubes. So what this means is when these levels of polyamines in this compound in your plant are at the adequate level with the sprays of Kelpak, these pollen grains can germinate, they can grow down the female flower and produce seed and produce fruit and set the fruit up. So when Kelpak is sprayed onto the crops and these levels of these compounds are adequate in the flowers, you improve fruit set. Now, if you consider a soybean pod and you want 4 or 5 seeds in your pod, that will mean if you have 4 seeds, 4 pollen grains would have grown down the female flower and fertilized the ovules to become seed. And so if you have the opportunity to improve this, you can really increase your yield. So in soybean, we apply Kelpak at 2 pints per acre, anywhere from V3 to V6, and we are even doing work up to R1 stage now, where we see that we can, applying it at the early stage, protecting it from stress, you can set up and increase your yield. This is also true if you apply it as an in-furrow spray or as a seed dressing. My favorite is to apply it early at planting and then follow up with a foliar spray, let's say at V4 to V6, and that combination really helps to set up growth. So these were trials in South Africa. We've also done quite a number of trials in the Midwest. Again, soybean is quite a flexible crop for us that you can apply anywhere from V3 to R1. We've tested it in furrow, and also the combination of a furrow spray with the V6, and you keep on getting a good result. To illustrate this in a trial, I like to use very big plots for my independent trials. Any trial results that you ever see from Kelpak is always an independent researcher. It's a statistically laid out trial, so you know that what we are telling you can repeat on your farm. Now, it was compared to a control, and then Kelpak was sprayed as an in-furrow spray at 1 pint per acre, and then Kelpak was also sprayed as a foliar spray 2 pints per acre at the 4-leaf stage. What was interesting is in this trial, we improved the number of pods on the plant, 109 compared to 77. The moisture content was even a little bit lower in Kelpak treated plants in the control, so there was not a moisture effect. And we improved the number of bushels per acre by, let's call it 4 bushels per acre increase just on that treatment. We have also some evidence from this trial where the number of seeds per pod will also increase slightly. I think it was 4.2 pods per seeds per pod compared to 3.8, but there's a good tendency to increase the number of seeds and increase in the pods and increase the number of pods on the plant. In corn, we've also done quite a number of trials in South Africa. It's our home base, and so we do a number of trials here. Again, the same rate, 2 pints per acre at the 4 to 5 leaf stage, and we get a good average yield increase over many trials. Now, this has always been the strategy to apply at the 3 to 4 leaf stage, and the reason why we do this is if you prevent stress at this stage, if you can mitigate that stress, you set your plants up for success. And when the plants at that stage sees that conditions are favorable, I've got all the nutrients I need, I can really fill my seed. And that's a good application strategy for us to apply at the young and early stage. And it's also good to mention at this stage that if it's applied, it can also be combined with glyphosate, with other pesticides. It can be applied at the same time. What's nice is when it's applied with the herbicide, it helps the absorption into the weeds, so you get better control and you do not get such a harsh knockdown effect by the herbicides. But we've also looked at strategies to apply it on the seed. So Kelpak, you can apply it at 6 to 8 fluid ounces per 100 weight over the seed. If we also have a new product that QLF can inform you about, it's called Kelpak Max with 2 X's for Max. It's a double strength product, and it can be applied at 3 fluid ounces per 100 weight as a seed treatment. So that makes it really interesting because it's got less liquid and it's very effective in stimulating germination and growth, early growth and establishment. This is just a picture in Washington State where Kelpak was applied at 8 fluid ounces over the seed. And you can see there with the Kelpak plant at the bottom, you get this fluffy roots going on compared to the control there. And those white roots are so important for nutrient absorption and water absorption. There are many studies showing that certain elements like calcium is only absorbed in white root tips. So it's really important to produce a plant with fluffy roots like that. And we see this with Kelpak. And one of the other things that we've noted, especially with Kelpak being applied as an in-furrow spray, is yes, we are stimulating the seed to germinate and grow, but we are also having an effect on the organisms around it. So when you stimulate the biology of around the roots, around this germinating seed, they can associate with the roots a little bit easier and better, and you have a stronger plant. So we got a researcher to look at these microorganisms in combination with Kelpak, and she did a study where she looked at Rhizobium trichoderma. They also later did it on Bacillus, And what they found is at the rate that we can recommend Kelpak at between 0.5 and 1%, there was this bell curve where it stimulates these organisms to divide and grow and really increases the population number. Now, I always say there's a little bit of a caveat here because it looks like the control, there was nothing going on. But if you look at your y-axis, the first index there is 5 to the power of 10 to the power of 9. So 5 billion colony forming units. And the control was already quite a number, but the effect of Kelpak is so profound on these organisms that it's just off the chart, and it just stimulates them in a really big way. So always something interesting. If you are applying a biological, apply Kelpak with it in the soil and you'll see the result. It wakes them up, it helps them divide, and if you put a good product like QLF's Boost with that, that molasses source gives them the energy to those populations to grow further and really set up your yield. We've done a number of trials on corn in the Midwest and different countries. We played around with concentration at the beginning, but we found that for regular Kelpak, 6 fluid ounces or 3 fluid ounces for Kelpak Max, it's really a good way to go to stimulate, to improve your yield, but combining it with a foliar pass is always recommended. In 2022, we did a trial partnered with QLF. We produced corn here. You see the control yielded 220 bushels. The Kelpak application of an in-furrow spray plus the foliar improves the yield by 7 bushels. So just that Kelpak combination improves the yield significantly above the control. Combining it then with the QLF products, the Amino 15 and the Boost products, you see that the yield even increased more. I mean, that's for the last bar there, it's already 22 bushels above the control. So the combination between the products are well and they work well together. I also included just a couple of slides on vegetables. If there's anyone in the audience that are interested in vegetables, any vegetable that is planted from a seedling, it's always preferred that the seedling is dipped in a Kelpak solution before transplant, or that you water the trays with a 1% Kelpak solution. And that really helps with transplant shock and establishing new roots for the seedling. And that's a very cheap and economical way to boost your plant. Then normally 2 weeks later, we spray a foliar of Kelpak at 2 to 3 pints per acre, and that's normally applied 2 to 3 times every 2 weeks. Now, on a trial on cucurbits, this was on watermelons, we found that just by dipping the seedlings before transplant, we improved the yield by 13%. And then combining it with foliar sprays, that yield increased to 36% above a control. So the combination of cucurbits, you will not go wrong. It works so well. Different trials in California, seedless watermelons, seeded watermelons, rock melons, pumpkins. You always get quite a nice yield response with Kelpak. You might ask, why was the seedless watermelon such a big difference? Now, when a watermelon or any fruit really produces seed, those seeds produce their own gibberellic acid that stimulates the tissue around it to grow, right? Gibberellic acid makes cells bigger. So when that's not there and Kelpak is applied, you can just see that effect on increasing the size of the watermelons. Remember that table grape I showed you where it's normally just sprayed with gibberellic acid. Now spraying Kelpak on them, make them nice and big. Same principle here. There's a young guy in Texas that has been using Kelpak on his watermelons, and for 2 years in a row, he has harvested more than 20% more and heavier watermelons. And so that was really something to see. If there are anyone in the audience looking at fruit trees, depending on the crop, we've got a specific recommendation. But for most fruit trees, we start spraying and flowering and up to fruit set. These were looking at pollen from cherries, and you can see when Kelpak's applied during flowering, we improve the growth of the pollen tubes, more pollen germinating, and you can improve set, especially if there are varieties that are not setting so well in your area. You can apply Kelpak to improve that. Some trial results on cherries, spraying it 3 to even 5 times, and sometimes the result can be even unbelievable, especially in cherries that do not set well. And when you get that formula right and you add the right nutrients and you add Kelpak, the yield can really increase dramatically. On citrus, like I said before in that study that we looked at, is that our recommendation was, by trial and error, was to apply during flowering. So we start at white sip or popcorn stage or balloon stage, if you call it that. That's the first time we spray, when the flowers have developed at fruit set. And then just before fruit fall, we apply it again, and that helps to increase the number of fruit on the plant. Not always heavier fruit, but more fruit. Take lots more fruit. A trial on seedless lemons, so you don't even need to be a seeded variety. Kelpak helps with the development of seedless varieties. We look at the number of fruits on the tree, 433 compared to 343. So 4 applications at a lower dose of 0.2% seems to do the trick. Fruit weight was slightly higher for the Kelpak treatment, nothing to write home about, but that is expected if you're producing so many fruits. And of course, there was a subsequent yield improvement. In other fruit crops, when you want to improve fruit set, we recommend applying at the flowering stages, basically full flower, petal fall, sepal fall, and that helps increase the fruit number. If you want to improve the fruit size, you would go after fruit set, and in stone fruit, we speak about pit hardening, and during its exponential growth phase, you'll spray it every 10 to 14 days, and that helps increase the size of the fruit. I've added a last slide on just different crops that we have done trials on, and by this stage it's even more than this, but you can see a consistent, a good average yield improvement. For each crop here, we would apply it and treat it maybe in a little bit of a different way, so you always reach out to QLF if you want to try something on a new variety or new crop, but there's a lot of research to back this, and you're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we'll guide you on the application. With that, I'll thank you for your time today, and I'm not sure if there'll be a way to answer some questions, but I'm here if there are.
Heino, I don't know if you saw, but there are some questions in the Q&A. If you want to look at those and maybe answer some of those.
Sure. Let me just... Okay, Jason asked, Kelpak is a seed treatment. How long before planting can I apply? No, it's a biological product. So if you treat your seed and you can keep it dry and in darkness, light degrades biological products. So if you can apply it to the seed and use it within a week, or let's say in the first couple of weeks, that would be fine. I would not store it for extended periods of time, but if you can treat it and use it in the next couple of weeks, that would be fine, especially if it's stored in the dark. Colby asked, how long after foliar application in Michigan does Kelpak remain effective, continue to benefit the crop? This would be in soft red winter wheat, dry beans, soybeans, and field corn. So we find that the effect can be long lasting, especially if you spray it at the seedling stage. It can, you mitigate the stress, you stimulate more roots, so that effect and with the new roots can last quite a long time. We have a general rule that we do not spray Kelpak more closely than 2 weeks apart. So the plant processes it, reduces new roots, and it processes through the plant in about a 2-week cycle. But that effect remains, and you see the benefit quite a long way. Jason asked again, Kelpak help with stress caused by excessive moisture? Excessive moisture is a tricky one because the roots start dying if there's not enough oxygen, and so if it's severely waterlogged, Kelpak in that condition, if there's no environment to produce new roots, then it's tricky. If the soil dries out though, we've had farmers spray Kelpak as a foliar spray, and we've seen that it stimulates new roots again and that plants can recover. typically where Kelpak is used to rescue plants, if you think of hail damage, if there's some leaf area left where Kelpak can be sprayed and where it can be absorbed and it can grow down to the plant to stimulate more roots, it helps a lot. So if the soil drains again and you can use them that way, then spray it as a foliar spray and it will help. Kelpak and cotton. We don't have the most trial results on cotton, unfortunately. We do have some work. If you could reach out to QLF and they send me an email, I can send you some results. It's typically applied early the first time, and then, funny enough, when the bolls start forming, or right at the beginning of flowering, Kelpak is sprayed again. We've seen some good results with that, but it hasn't been a focus for us lately, but we can definitely guide you on an application strategy. Dean Engelman asked, will Kelpak increase the size of the fruit in tomatoes? Tomatoes, depending on the variety, if it's processing tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, there's a question about that. And we've seen an increase in size in processing tomatoes. Normally in tomatoes, we would spray, dip the seedlings, treat them basically when they have 4 true leaves, 3 to 4 true leaves, and many farmers would keep on spraying it every 3 to 4 weeks. So that will go into flowering, and I've got the suspicion that when we apply flowering, we set more fruit, but definitely we've seen much larger tomatoes. We sometimes see a color improvement. We've had a recent trial on processing tomatoes in California, where we found the best treatment to be Kelpak applied through drip irrigation. So that is an option. We are still learning about drip irrigation and how to use it most effectively, but it seems if you can apply it at the end of the irrigation cycle at about 4 pints per acre, 4 to 5 pints per acre, we see that you can increase the yield, the size of tomatoes. We saw that there were more first-grade tomatoes, and the yield was improved dramatically. So Dean, we can share that with you. I did summarize it. It was a demonstration trial on a farm, but we are doing a statistical trial in California this coming year. Dean also asked, any experience on alfalfa, grass use and forage production? I love this question. I don't think I've put the slide in there now. On the regrowth of alfalfa, especially if you leave it a couple of inches where you've still got some leaf area where it can absorb Kelpak, basically 4 to 7 days after cutting, you can spray Kelpak, and it helps with a much faster regrowth. So it shortens your time to harvest again. It helps a lot with stimulating the leaves. Firstly, it goes down the plant, stimulates the roots, and then it flushes up in the plants and produces more leaves. It has a great effect. And also on alfalfa, we'll be doing a trial in Arizona this year. I know the conditions is probably not the same as in Wisconsin or other areas, but we need to start somewhere. And it does. Many trials in South Africa has shown a profound effect on alfalfa. And then TJ said, work great on new seedlings with boost and on new seedlings in alfalfa. Any young plant, anything from a seed, when you apply Kelpak at that stage, you'll see a great effect. It really helps with germination, it helps with establishment. Okay, I see the questions stopped coming in. We'll give it a couple of seconds. All right, I think those were all the questions. Thank you everyone for listening. If you want to know anything more, contact him and his team. They've really partnered with, is a really good partnership between Kelpak and QLF, and we're grateful for the work that they do with us. And I'm looking forward to working with you. And if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Okay, we just concluded Heinu's portion of the webinar. that was the most important part of the webinar because we wanted to get more information out there about this product that we've been distributing for, I believe it's going on 7 or 8 years. When I came to work here at QLF, we were approached by a company that was distributing this product out of California, and they were looking for a molasses partner as a humectant. And I'm going to touch on that today a little bit, how Boost is a great sprayer partner pass. Humectants are things that don't dry out on leaves. So where we first discovered Kelpak was actually in almonds and grapes, partnered with, actually at the time it was TerraFed before Boost. But if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, I realized with this event that there were many people that did not get the invitation. And in the Agronomy Research Center today, we have farmers and consultants. This was supposed to be kind of a meeting for everybody. And there's a lot of good information. We are a monthly newsletter. We're trying to keep it to 500 words or less. But the one that was rolled out a week ago was Dr. Heino's story. And I challenge you to read that because if you think about his background, he wasn't really looking for this job that he has now. He did the research on the product, and the company that's been around for as long as QLF's been around discovered that he had information that they needed. And so jokingly, his wife said that he should probably apply 80 times before he gets a call, and the first time he put his resume into Kelp Products, they hired him. So he had this background in research, and it's kind of interesting how he got to see the product, how it separates itself. You know, a lot of us are hired to sell products that maybe we don't believe in. My job's easy because I believe in Boost. But Kelpak kind of found him, and Kelpak found QLF. We went from 2 pallets the first time we agreed to taking that product on, and this year we're probably going to surpass 10 containers. And I can tell you that wasn't from flashy marketing and big marketing budgets and lots of advertising, because a number of you probably never heard of this product. There's a lot in California, but not many in the I-states or the Midwest. So we're kind of bringing this product to the market here in the Grain Belt. So anyway, I encourage you to look at that newsletter, ask your RSA, your local reps, go on the website. If no one's getting you signed up, sign up. That'll give you a really good context as to who he is and why we have this product. So QLF Agronomy, we are a division of Quality Liquid Feeds. If you haven't figured that out, QLF's been around for as long as I've been around. We were established the same year. We are family owned, and across the street from this Agronomy Research Center, there's an office, the headquarters. And we influence a lot of livestock, primarily ruminants. And if you really think about, you know, why we're growing as a company in this fertilizer arena, it's because we've been doing it for 46 years, just in a different kind of ecosystem, you know, a cow's stomach. So if you really think about when we stimulate biology, this isn't a strange conversation anymore. People are admitting that microbes can do it better than man can, right? And there's a lot of interesting things that come from these products that are more natural and less synthetic. So whether it's your feed efficiency or your residue recycling program, there's a fit here because QLF's been balancing rations with nitrogen and carbon. They just call it protein and energy. You know, so second to molasses, the basic ingredient that we are basic in the country, and I'll show you this in a second, we handle a lot of non-protein nitrogen, also known as urea solution. So here's our footprint today. We got several feed facilities across the country. We've been delivering Boost and liquid carbon-based fertilizer into a lot of states. We have dedicated and segregated systems out there in these larger stars, and then we also lease tank space to get closer to our North Dakota friends in Castleton and then out in Tulare County. We actually are in Tulare County now. We have a place in Hanford that we lease products. So we blend Boost in Iowa and ship it to North Dakota, and we blend Boost in Washington and Arizona and ship it to that other California location. So we're expanding and growing as a company. What drew me into the company was the source. And this is what sugarcane looks like, and this is where it all begins for QLF. And if you think about the history in this company, this was one of the first tanks that the founder's father, or the Corisberg's dad, Kenny, the founder, had financed and built. Out of the 11 sugar mills today, we work with 10 of them. and we're growing to consume a majority of that molasses that comes out of the state of Louisiana. And just to kind of show you the commitment, the Berg family in QLF has grown this business and helped build capacity and storage. So I can tell you right now, we've got the best source, the most consistent source. We're not going to run out. I consider it a renewable resource. We don't have to mine it. And you know, if you've never seen sugarcane production, this is kind of what it looks like. And a couple years ago, we took about 30 dealer reps from across the country. You're seeing a group of our reps and distribution network that ranges from Northwest Washington all the way down to Florida, Arizona, all the way out to Ohio, and everywhere in between. Just to give people an idea and sense of our connection, because that is important. We have a source. And we wouldn't be here today if we weren't good at moving things. We move a mountain molasses every year. You know, the cane is crushed 2 to 3 months in the fall, and we take it to the interior of the country. And this is quite impressive what QLF has done. And you're sitting today, those in attendance, which used to be a supper club. And, you know, the people in Dodgeville here have often wondered what's going on with that building where they once upon a time maybe attended a wedding. But not too long ago, I think Corey made the decision to turn this into an agronomy research center. And you can see by the words on the sign that it's pretty bold. I mean, people don't have to ask any questions. They can kind of read for themselves. This is just showing the commitment to the research, and the people here today are going to get a tour and just see some of the tools we get to work with. I know Heino was eyeing up this machine right here. This is where the oven used to be in the kitchen, and this is the grill chamber. You're going to get to see that. This is the greenhouse up behind our facility. A lot of people got talking about the time we built this because that's when apparently hemp was taking off, and there was a lot of questions about what was going on here, but we get to practice in that place before we go to the field. And this is one of my favorite tools that we have here. This is a secret plant we have behind the facility here. Some of you know it. I won't give the code numbers, but Jordan and Anthony do a good job of helping manage this. And I can tell you, this is like what I call the big jar testing facility. Tank management. There's a lot to tank management and doing big formulations and putting things out there over the winter. And hopefully today the tour will show you some things that Anthony's been working on. We're constantly playing and practicing in these tanks. So today, carbon it's the buzzword. And it's really very fitting because it is a foundation to everything. And I hope I can kind of differentiate what our carbon source is. And you can kind of see that this is what drives everything. Gary Hatfield's really smart guy, and he shared a lot of good information about how to look at soil health and the progression of, you know, as you step up to really good healthy soil. There's all these tests on the market today that can tell you that you have more respiration. But if you really break it down and look at this simple staircase, it all starts with stimulating biology. And what does the biology then do? They start turning over things, recycling residue, building soil aggregate. And if you really want to think about how soil health could be measured, it's very simple. How is the air and water capacity in your soil? What does the soil aggregate stability look like? After a hard rain, how much water infiltrates versus runs off? Water infiltration rates really are probably the most simplest way to see how your soil health is doing. And Jerry's a big fan of what we're doing as a company, managing pH and bringing an available energy source like Boost. A lot of biologicals on the market today. I was actually going to present after this gentleman here. He actually paid for a trial, and it's in our newsletter. You want to read this one. You know, a lot of biologicals on the market, and this was the data that came out of that. And I had to share this one today because Heino had presented something really interesting on how they triggered a response in biology, and it really fit well with what we're doing. If you want to read about this, in Whitewater, Wisconsin, we actually took ounces versus gallons of that biological you just saw and showed some statistical separation. So if someone is integrating a biological program into your agronomy fertility plan, we have a lot of data that supports that. And let's not make any competition here. The goal is that we want a healthy balance, and everybody feeds off of root exudates. You know, we want to be active in the root zone, and you can see through his information that he shared with the fungi and bacteria when he touched on that, because because there's a lot of debate about, sugars, bacteria, and then, what's the fungi food, but everything feeds off a root. Ultimately, that's where all the energy comes from. So it's real basic. I could go on for another 30, 40 minutes, and I'm just going to keep saying the same thing, and I'm going to keep going on here, but if you really think about it, the goal is to work with your biology, and that's why we have these printed on the back of our t-shirts. If you want more yields, you need to work with biology. We trademarked the letters L-CBF in front of the word boost, liquid carbon-based fertilizers. And if you want to evaluate a product like Boost or evaluate a product that you're currently using, I think this is a great outline to follow. When you look at fertilizers, they should be in a balanced form, not just one nutrient. And isn't the goal of a fertilizer to be exchangeable? That's things that we look at. We want a good quality nutrients in a balanced and exchangeable form. And the whole purpose of using fertilizers, anything you add to it, you want to improve the performance. I mean, there's a lot of soil corrective activities out there, but I say that poor fertilizer maybe becomes expensive soil correction. And this season that we have right now, we may need to ride on some of the fertility that's in our soils. We may have to try to compromise or cut some corners, and I hope that your soils are in good condition, because you're going to be able to ride on that. You want your fertilizer to be high performance, because that's what you're trying to do, is boost that plant and boost your biology. So it's really fun doing this job, because nobody really disagrees with this idea that biology rules, and it's becoming mainstream. And so, yeah, that's what we do. We have a nice recipe that we put together in a fertilizer package, and this was an outline we made 10 years ago. I've been doing this already 14 years, starting off as a dealer rep, but the products are versatile. They are consistent. They are convenient. And the reason we get return on investment is they're not expensive to participate. They are cost effective. Even if beans go down to $8, I did adjust my return on investment on a few trials, just because, we're not marketing $5, $6 corn anymore. But the fastest way to get a return on investment is to what? Be able to afford it, right? So how much are you willing to risk? And it's just every trial we do, we have a great ROI track record. So why do you care about partnering with QLF? Well, this is why you care. You want to bring value to your farm. It's all about yield potential. And it begins with better starts. You're going to see a lot of our programs where all the treatments were done in the first 30 days, whether it was post-emerge or pre-emerge or in furrow or 2x2x2, it's all 30 days. And how you set that thing up for any crop pays huge dividends. This is why we got into the business. It was actually, for me, treating UAN with molasses, and I'm going to touch on that later, but nutrient use efficiency is really important, and how you track it on your farm is important too, because that's really, at the end of the day, that's what we're after. Foliar feeding, I'm going to touch on how this, if you want to get Kelpak into your plants, and how Kelpak found QLF and Boost, they go really well together. So any contact herbicides or foliar nutrition, there's a lot of physical, biochemistry, a lot of characteristics in Boost that line up brilliantly as a foliar partner. The word quality is in our name, quality liquid feeds. And if you think about quality forage, because we are a livestock feed company, we influence a lot of meat and milk out here. The other word for that, even if you're not a livestock producer, is called plant health. And as you improve plant health, you get better quality forage. So sugar, it's how plants do it. And I don't think we need to spend a lot of time in this. I know a lot of you have heard me give this talk, but sucrose is what a plant wants to make every day, and it's the predominant sugar that's found in your sugarcane molasses. Once upon a time, a farmer had asked me, well, what's the size of your sugar? And to put in perspective, it is small enough for the things inside your cells. So sucrose in solution, that is what we have. We have solution sugar. And so if you look at the size of your DNA and the size of a sucrose molecule, it's pretty small. Right? So here's what I want you to take away. What's in Boost and what's in our molasses, it's how plants do sugar. Don't overthink this. And then there's the brown part of this cane molasses. This is not the sugar part. And we've been saying the same message for over a decade. It has not changed. Some of you are nodding your heads in the crowd because you've been with it since the start. And yeah, we've cleaned up some of our mistakes. We've gotten better at what we do. But if you really think about it, phytonutrients are why you're supposed to juice and drink your fruits and vegetables. And that's kind of how I look at sugarcane and Kelpak. Those are plant extracts. And there's a lot of goodies on that tag that doesn't show up on your fertilizer label. We don't register the product for all the calcium, magnesium, and yes, potassium, but all the traces and the micronutrients that are found in molasses. This is a bonus from working with a natural material. So if you want to screenshot this right now, this is basically our secret recipe for biological soup. It's not just sugar water. There's a lot going on here. And if you want to learn more, QF is a resource. Reach out to your reps and get this 4-page need to know and nice to know about molasses. Okay, there's a lot of information here. There's way more information than you need to go out there into the agronomy world and have a conversation about sugar and molasses, but we lay it all out there for you. So I can't stress enough. There was a couple references I made from the newsletter. What's the difference between a biostimulant versus a biological? Well, let's make it clear. Kelpak is a biostimulant that has a trigger and response that gets biology working. And Boost feeds biology, but we don't print any known organisms in the product. We are not the bug in the jug, but we play really well with what you're trying to do. We're trying to build a better host and plant that's going to create more opportunities for biology. So look at our articles. There's a lot of context here that really helps people understand why we're growing and who we are. This is our product portfolio. I'm going to touch on just 3 products today, but it's very simple. We have a pocket-sized guide that fits in most pockets. And if you think about the products we have in our portfolio, they're very broad spectrum. They cover a lot of different jobs that you need done on your farm. So let's start off with the starter, because if you're going to maximize yields, it's all about a better start. And I would argue a better healthy start. So 721.3 MKP is our signature starter. Everything we do has a version of Boost built in. You don't have to add Boost to this one. I mean, this time of year, we're making decisions, and I can't believe every year that we still have people who say, well, I'll put a little Boost in there. You might add Boost to your nitrogen, which might go with this blend. Potato growers kind of add it all in there. But for you corn growers, this is a really balanced product. What's in it? It's concentrated, it's balanced crop nutrients, and this is the key word, available carbon. We have energy in our product. Why you want this? This is like any starter you try to evaluate. We want to be able to work with biology, and it's all about making the nutrients more recoverable that you put in there, whether it's softer and gentler for those roots that you're putting it next to, or the seeds that you're germinating, or if you're trying to kick loose nutrients that are already there on your farm. Those are pretty big whys, why this product works. The purpose of a starter, at least from what I understand and what I've learned from a lot of you, is it's to promote early and uniform plant and root growth. That sets the stage for higher yields, right? What do you suppose the number one reason why this product keeps going and growing, every year, whether it's high cost phos or low cost corn or low price corn? Why do we think we keep growing this product? It's not the cheapest. I can tell you straight up. It's because it takes the work out of it. You can keep farming and looking forward and not have to worry about trying to do a jar test with some other product on your farm. It's a smooth and easy handling product. What's unique about it is we are not potassium hydroxide based. We're a polyortho blend, and our orthophosphate is actually very unique. It's monopotassium phosphate. And we've been able to put a high concentration into a package that weighs 11 pounds, and we don't plug anything. And we have lots of molasses in there, lots of carbon, lots of energy. Fred Biela did some work on this for 3 years in the state of Illinois. He showed the right combination of MKP and Boost significantly enhanced yield just from the start. But the part at the top there that you need to pay close attention to, yes, yields pay the bills, but does everything on your farm contribute to yield? I hope so. But what if we stopped at 30 days or V6? Wouldn't the plant that was bigger, taller, stronger, faster be the one that won the trial? Isn't this really the job of a starter, is to leave you in a better head start? Because that's what 721.3 did when we sorted it out. And if you want to compare like-kind chemistry, don't get hung up on numbers and fertilizers. 624.6, 721.3, pretty similar in numbers, okay? The difference between this split in the field when it hasn't rained in Champaign for maybe 10 days is one plant is showing stress. And some might argue the other one isn't behaving. It's still laying its leaves wide open. It's not trying to conserve moisture. Why do you suppose that is? I mean, obviously there's a boost factor going on here, right? But what do you suppose contributes to that? And it's this thing called mucilage. This is the zone between your root and your soil biology. This is like the rhizosheath the thing between the rhizosphere and your root. This is the most important part on your farm. And in other words, when you dig roots and you shake them or wash them, you can't get rid of the evidence. Because what you're seeing there is an old blend we had out in South Dakota, and you can see going up against a better 918-9. That was a dressed up 1034-0 with boost in it. And there's science that supports it. This scientist had done her career on researching mucilage. If you could explain to your friends and neighbors why your corn's not wilting or curling up, is because you have potentially a gram more mucilage, you could say, well, maybe I have 100,000 times more water holding capacity. How do you wrap your head around that, right? But the science supports what we do, and what we see for observations line up perfectly. So let me take you upstream here from where I'm standing. This is a sandbox in our state. This is called Central Sands. Now, what does it look like when you try to dig a root system and drag it to your tailgate to show your neighbors and your farmer, right? What generally falls off the roots when you're in a sandbox? Like everything. Pretty hard to glue that to the roots, isn't it? So here's a little seedling. Not bad, right, Heino? He learned that terminology when he came to Wisconsin. He didn't understand why people said, how you doing today? He goes, not bad. Not bad. So let's drag it out to the tailgate. This is a rhizosphere, right? This is mucilage at work, even in a sandbox. And I'll just take another dry year of 2023. I don't know if you guys had timely rains. I think we had a lot of untimely and missed rains. But even in a really drought year in central Illinois, 720-3 showed up big. 24 bushel better than its competitor. And that has a lot to do with what you just saw with mucilage and biological activity. Don Schrieffer was ahead of his time. In fact, if he were alive today, he'd say, how'd you figure out how to work with molasses? He was a dairy nutritionist or authored a couple books, and he says, you need to design your fertilizer like liquid colostrum. I won't spend a lot of time on that reference, but those that got cattle understand the importance of it. Maybe you need to look at your plants as what's the health status of them rather than what's the numbers removed in 10 to 15 or 20 days. If you planted all night and you forgot to add fertilizer, or you didn't want to wait for the guy to bring you more fertilizer, isn't it fun? Wouldn't it be easy if you just showed up like this every day and said, this is where I used the fertilizer and where I didn't? And my best stories are generally mistakes. But I'm not showing you that impressive picture. What I'm really showing you is setting yourself up for yield potential and physiological maturity. You see things like QLF products and Kelpak can help you get to the finish line healthier and faster and more consistently. That's a big deal right there. It wasn't that dryland corn farmer, had a wild swing in yield, or that he saw a nice line where he turned it on and off. Some of you have seen that, not that dramatic, but look at the maturity of that crop. So I always like to say the programs win, and there's all kinds of data that you can find. I'm not going to go through each one and fine-tune, you can take the products home or read the data, talk to your reps. But what I want to point out here is, we do multi-year, multi-location, independent, replicated, 6 reps per treatment. All of this win right here with that 21 bushel gain, that was all done V4 and before. Because after we put a really nice package of 721-3 down and a high quality micronutrient package like corn spike, yes, corn spike works. I encourage everybody to put corn spike in their 721-3. We came afterwards with boost, amino 15, and dare I say, some more micronutrients and maybe a shot of Kelpak as well. All that was done in this trial back here before 5 collars. That sets yourself up for high yield. In fact, that sets you up to do a 0.61 nitrogen use efficiency, which is probably a little lean in my opinion. That's pretty impressive because all that 150 units was all pre-broadcast urea, unprotected. This was a starter trial that showed up big. So if you do fertilizer right, it can convince your plant that it lives in a good soil, not a bad soil. I did not tweet this, but my friend Michael did for me. And we're heading down to Houston, Texas to the Commodity Classic. And this happened at the Commodity Classic. But I'm going to tell a story about Joe. Joe used liquid on his planter. He has an air seeder. And he hired Farmer's Edge to come over and take pictures of his crops. And just like the guy that ran out, Joe never finished this field with starter. This is spring wheat. And NDVI imagery showed there was more vegetative index, more things that was living tissue. It was picked up from a satellite. And so we had to go out there and inspect. You see the blue dot here. This is where the RSA and the drone is standing, and he's going to fly over there and count wheel tracks. But look at the NDVI imagery. Look where the starter, what it did. And so then you can't see it with your naked eyes, but you walk out there and you find the sprayer tracks. and you count it over and you dig up some wheat plants and you look at this and say, there's a line. What's most impressive about this was fence row to fence row, Joe reported more even, uniform yield across all the different soil types. So you head out to Southwest Kansas with me and you say, there's a guy on that side of the road. You can see the side that's not really doing much. And then there's one that watches the guy across the road who's trying a little harder, right? And what you're seeing there is a difference of a starter program, smart fertility management. This is the start of winter wheat, and it kind of segues into our foliar product. If you're feeding cows, I don't think you need to do much work trying to figure out what gave you the biggest bang. But this is the product we bring to market that is our foliar nitrogen. It's called Amino 15. Amino 15 is another version of Boost. All of you have been asking for a gentle, safe way to foliar nitrogen feed, a little more nitrogen with your Boost. This is Amino 15. It's one of my favorites. It's the easiest product to play with and handle. What is it? Well, it's convenience, and it's got two forms of nitrogen. Boost has urea, but this has additional urea, and it has an L form of an amino acid. That's one of our signatures. Anyway, why do you use a product like Amino 15? Because it's safe, and it doesn't take water or energy to make protein. A lot of poor man foliar out there, just because we cut the burn on 28%, I'm up in Wisconsin, or 32, that's not a good thing to foliar feed, even though we cut the burn. How many of you guys have burned your crops trying to foliar feed some nitrogen or broadcast some nitrogen, right? So the purpose here is that, you got to spread your dollar, right? You got to decide where you're going to integrate these things without breaking the bank. Because you can't just keep adding costs. This year is going to be a tough one, right? Maybe you could diversify some of the nitrogen you're broadcasting pre, post, side dress. Make room in the plant's diet and diversify your nitrogen portfolio. I can tell you that this is a vehicle to add a lot of nutrition like Kelpak, micronutrients. We have one called Power Max. It's a boron blend, but Amino 15 is really easy. Now at QLF, we can add these products for you if you want. Just like we had Corn Spike to starter, we can add some Kelpak and Power Max to the Amino 15. Let's go to some yields. A lot of guys, when you say put 3 gallons on, it's a natural tendency from farmers to cut the rate in half, right? But it's kind of fun when you see that 3 gallons outperformed 1.5 gallons. That's trending in the right direction. This was with a fungicide pass on wheat, Amino 15. Or you go to Aurora, Nebraska. We're going to be back there again this year. We're going to be doing a trial with Kelpak on high-yielding beans. Aurora is why they are called the Cornhuskers. It is a great place to live if you're a corn plant. It didn't matter if it was early or late or early plus late. The yield results were consistent with Amino 15. When we go to the PTI farm in Pontiac, Illinois, right now as we're doing our webinar, they're wrapping up and doing lunch down in Platteville. The PTI is on their tour, and Jason Webster is going to be here later today to check out this facility. He's done a lot of work with us. 7 years we'll be starting with him down at the PTI farm. And Amino 15, it just a miss. It's been a great product to go post applications. This could be your boost for corn. 8.3 bushel on tassel corn. Very gentle, very safe. And it's a great carrier for other things you want to do. So let's get into the flagship product. This is why we are where we are today. It's this product called Boost. Boost is more than a product, it's also a concept. How are you going to boost your biology? How are you going to boost your fertilizer performance? How are you going to do it in a way that is good for soil health? And we're going to get to the end of this. I'm going to show you how we check all those boxes. But Boost is a concentrate. It weighs 11 pounds. The numbers that it has is not because we were trying to hit numbers. It's just what they are. It's low pH and it's available carbon. Those are the features that you need to tell your partners in your operation why you use Boost. It stimulates biology and it makes nutrients more available. It has some advantages when you spray it on a leaf too, and we're going to get to that. But the purpose of using Boost is real simple. We want to maintain plant health, right? And we want to maintain nutrient cycling. The moment your soils get tired, lazy, dry, wet, biology suffers, right? The moment you put more salt fertilizer down, what does biology think of that? Think of all the things that Boost can do to help complete that process, keep that moving forward. And the goal is for finishing with higher yields. So one of the first testimonies I saw was the guy that sprayed this on his wheat. This is not far from Green Bay, Wisconsin. And one thing you can see physically a benefit from a carbon-based fertilizer is mitigating salt. There was a nice yield advantage, but it made a great photo op, and that's where it came from. So let's reduce the salt impact. Let's keep that fertilizer healthier for biology and plants. And I believe we accept this in the industry too, do we not? There's a lot of salt mitigation that we probably should look at, whether it's our adjuvant package, whether it's your fertilizer done wrong, hot, dry day, and you go out there and this is what we do as an industry. Now, I didn't go looking for this job and I didn't study this in my career, but I've always been puzzled with why this is like just standard practice, just how we do it, you know. Got to shorten them beans up in the process of knocking out some leaves. So anyway, it doesn't matter. In my journey here, this is a long time ago. I'll be down there with Steve actually in Illinois. That was Andy's place. Early spray pass, late spray pass in Nebraska. Doesn't matter. But this is one thing that is really some of the lowest hanging fruit and opportunities for you to see benefits for plant health with Boost. You know, you see injury and disease, and it's the shape of a sprayer width. Right, and then you see these natural humectants. That's how we found Kelpak. That's how we found Heino, and that's why we're a distributor of multiple containers of it, because we don't dry out on the leaf. And then there's the drift control. Now, I didn't show the video today, but I paused that and froze that video. It's on YouTube. There's a crop duster there that has GoPro cameras mounted on the wings. Can you see the straight edge? It's a line, right? When I watch crop dusting videos, they're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to look pretty and swirly. So Boost holds droplets together, and it's been tested in a wind tunnel twice. We are a great tank partner. We hold droplets together. We don't dry out in the leaf. We improve intake of things you're trying to get into the plant. And the part I'm going to dive into here in a little bit, I just want to give credit to our colleague Jim Porter for shooting this film. And that was the day that thistle caterpillar showed up in Nebraska. And you're literally seeing just a half a gallon of Boost. I think we could turn that up a little more, right? Okay, good sound effect. So let's dive into metabolism. Well, before that, I'm just going to touch on this quickly. If you want to break surface tension, what's the goal of that? Why do you do that? It's so that you can really hug the leaf and get spread out and spread right where you want to be, right? You don't want to be beat it up looking like this, water on this leaf, on this microscope. This was taken, compliments of Anthony here at the Agronomy Research Center, and that's what Boost looks like on the leaf. It breaks surface tension. And if you're going to put some Kelpak and some Powerade and some other goodies that you like, and you're going to put it in your total tank mix, here's what a full tank looks like. That is a nice film, and that is not drying out. That's a sticker spreader. So Boost is registered as a fertilizer. That's how it's going to remain, but it's a fertilizer that has a lot of benefits. We know the features in it, but you can see the proven benefits of it. So what do you suppose is the next thing that's going to improve your yield? Maybe less injury, maybe more photosynthesis because you're not injured, less disease. But do you think because our soybeans today are tolerant of 4 different chemicals that they actually enjoy the word tolerant, right? This is something I question because I'm like, there's a lot of bad symptoms that come as side effects of what we have to go out and kill weeds. Now, make no mistake, we've invested in herbicide trials. What's the purpose of that? It wasn't to position Boost as an adjuvant. It was to prove that we didn't mess up your weed kill. Those are expensive trials because they count the weeds, and we've done several of them, and there is no issue. But we got to deal with this as a plant. We got to think of what the soybean wants because they're going to need energy and they're going to need nutrition to process these herbicides. So we have the trifoliate effect, we call it. It's all about staying on target and not drying out on the leaves. I've demonstrated that now, right? Stress mitigation. Who wants yellow color, more cupping, reduced growth, stunted plants? No, it's the reverse of that, isn't it? You don't want to shut down for days or weeks. Or how much did your beans grow in Illinois? I'm looking at some Illinois people. After it didn't rain for 3 weeks, you didn't get that trifoliate covering up the spray pass, right? Just sat there. You know, so why can't we do both? Why can't we improve plant health and kill the weeds and hit our targets? So herbicide breakdown, I'm not going to get into that. That's not my specialty, but Anthony has dove deeper into these things. And let's just know that it's a process. Breaking down herbicide has to be dealt with in a plant, even if it's tolerant. Even though it's Roundup ready, get ready to process these herbicides. So we go to one of our trials that was to show weed efficacy, and we see that one plant is shorter and one plant is taller. And I had a way of saying this last week, and I sometimes fumble and screw it up, but I think it's kind of funny. It's like, is plant B taller or is plant A getting shorter? I mean, either way, both these plants had the same chemistry. It says glyphosate 2,4-D in the conditioner, but it's Power Max and List 1 and boost versus no boost. You know, and the scientists, like a guy like Heino, would go out there and he'd say, well, I count 20 more leaves and 4 more nodes, or yeah, 4 more nodes of growth. Not bad. So we've done trials a couple of years, shown a 4-bushel response, and I don't know what the price of beans were when we figured that $40, but that was $10 beans, so adjust accordingly. But you can see it's very cost effective. And these are good programs. Some of you don't do anything in-furrow on your beans. Look closer at Boost. Boost is something to build your program around in-furrow on your beans. And then follow it up with a spray pass. And you know what would fit really good into 2 gallons of Boost and 2 gallons of Boost layered in the season? Some Kelpak. And that was the next slide, and I just missed it. That was a good segue. But so plant health and profitability, that's really what it's about. This gentleman here is an entomologist, and he says in all of his career, he's never found a sugar product quite as versatile and effective as Boost. If you have a chance to listen to Tom Dykstra, he's been featured on a lot of conferences and webinars. He's an authority when it comes to bricks. He's a scientist as well. He said there's truth in this, that if you have a healthier plant, it's a little more resilient to pest attacks. If you travel to Arizona and you spend time with Frank Mejia, you will probably pull over and stop and check bricks levels, because the guy loves to squeeze the juice out of plants. And he journals this. You know, some of you say journal is good. It's good practice to do every day. You know, get your thoughts on paper. Frank does a lot of research on bricks. And there's a 22. That's a pretty good one. He said that's average. But this is the part I want to show here. You see, Arizona is a great place to live because you never go dormant. That alfalfa is going to be cut 10 times. It doesn't go dormant. So here we are. We're establishing it in August. So we'll call it a fall seeding. And we're putting down a little 721-3. And then we came back with 4 different applications of Boost. The message isn't the high bricks and the nice looking stand. It's the next part that follows. Arizona alfalfa doesn't like cold temps. The seeds we choose for Arizona are not the ones we should choose for Wisconsin, right? So 19 days of freezing temperatures in this alfalfa, this new seeding showed no damage. That's the power of plant health and having a higher bricks. So whether it's alfalfa in Maricopa, Arizona, or it's alfalfa that Larry Parr came to your farm and scissor cut, we've shown a consistent return on this. So my advice on alfalfa is 1 or 2 times a year when it fits in your schedule. And if you have to spray for bugs, you'd be crazy not to throw Boost in with your spray pass. So what is plant health? Well, it's solid stem and multi-leaf and just basically that. The picture shows it. Roots and reproduction is primarily how I began this journey with Kelpak. But I think the one that's widely overlooked and it just fits every time we go across the field, and that is stress mitigation. When he shows these pepper plants from Egypt, it is relative to what we're doing. If you guys had any droughty conditions lately, you know, are we setting ourselves up for a good year? Somebody said 2012, way to be positive, you know, early spring. So Kelpak results. We weren't the first one to do this. In fact, before we became a distribution partner, somebody did us the privilege of putting quality liquid feeds into a trial in Baltic, South Dakota. And you can see out of all the Kelpak replications, which you probably haven't taken time to really appreciate how many times Heino presented 20 trials here and 6 trials there. Like they do a lot of work to validate their product. But I have to smile because even with a 6-bushel response across from all those hefty locations, quality liquid feed starter showed up to be the best. So that wasn't our trial, but we'll take credit for it because we're partnered with Kelpak. So this trial actually, back when we were above $6 corn, almost hit $100. But I had to adjust it last week because people were saying that's really annoying to see $99 up there. So I readjusted my math, and I don't know where you guys market your corn, but this is for a $3 range. Maybe it's not even that, Jordan. I don't know. He keeps telling me the news every day, but not bad. This is you afforded this whole program, and you saw a return on investment. I bet your plants looked really good doing it. So you came out with a good starter program that had some biostimulant with it like Kelpak. You came back with that foliar pass with Amino 15 and you hit it and reduced stress again. And who knows, maybe set 2 more kernels around. Because all of this was done, folks, before, you know, V6. Setting yourself up for more yield potential. So in Wisconsin, we have some social media out there. Actually, Anthony's brother works for the University of Wisconsin. He got us a backstage pass into a trial, and even in the Arlington Prairie, as late as R3, Boost showed a nice response, 7 bushel. And I show that because this trial is set up to do seed treatment and a late pass, and you can see here, obviously we like the way Boost performs with a planter pass and a post spray pass, but just adding another quart of Kelpak boosted yields by another 5 bushel. All this data is available to you. You just got to ask for it and we'll get it to you. I don't know how much time he spent on this, but this is kind of a new product. People were asking for a way to seed treat and not have to put as much product on. So Kelp Products went to work and made a double strength product. We named it Kelpak Max. These sheets are available to you. I can tell you in all the trials that I've been a part of on the seed treatment itself, I can visually see the rooting differences, but generally it's about 2 to 3 bushel. So set your expectations on yield right here, but set your expectations really high on how your plants are going to look and how the roots are going to perform. Because obviously seed treatment isn't the only thing you do this year, but it's a pretty low cost investment. In fact, if you treat your soybeans, at an average rate with average pounds, seeds per pound, and we're looking at a buck an acre. On corn, we're looking at 50 cents. These are going to be easy return on investments. Now the challenge is how you're going to get your seed treated, but this is one of the lowest hanging fruit that I can give you out of our lineup. So I would say come at it with a seed treatment and then come back with a foliar pass if you have the ability to do that. So here it is, roots, reproduction, and stress mitigation, but this is the seed treatment. In the ARC here, we get to do a lot of trials. These people that are here today are going to get a tour, and this was kind of a fun one because we got to see this improved variety of fescue all summer long as Anthony would spray it with products. We treated it with Kelpak. We fed it Amino 15 3 or 4 times. The take-home message was on a new established grass. They had over almost 3 tons of dry matter, significantly more quality, and gained protein. I like this because it shows our competitor, and I won't name the competitor, but I will tell you that it is a synthetic PGR and a value-added fertilizer. Now, these are kidney beans. They're a little more sensitive than your soybeans, but kind of the same deal. You want to see that uniform lateral branching, and so that's a great product to use and program to use in any bean. Potatoes. I don't know how much time he spent on potatoes, but this is one way that Anthony can contribute food to the office across the street. These were growing in pots out in our greenhouse, and here we're taking an improved 624-6, a standard 1034-0, and we're doing Kelpak seed treatment. Pretty impressive. Setting more fruit uniformly and having synergy with the molasses-based fertilizer people at QLF. This is a good example. Some additional affirmation for me is that my kids and I set out to grow elderberries and actually purchased sticks of elderberries for transplanting. And I thought, why not take full advantage of my, my employer here and say, let's try a little trial before Tim goes and puts these transplants into the ground. So we did a little trial. And it was amazing. At first I felt really weird paying money for a stick. And then when I pulled it out of those trays, and I had people helping transplant that day, and they're like, what did you do to your elderberries? And I said, well, 2% of a solution. I didn't dip them. I soaked them in them for overnight in a Ziploc bag, but maybe I went a little too much product, but that's nothing. And so to me, when I was trying to plan how much Kelpak you guys were going to consume and to order, it's things like this that really give you affirmation and help you decide there's something here. So just because it's from the ocean, I'm going to tell you that you learned something today. Kelp is not all the same. I think Heino did a good job of explaining where this one came from. This is the one we work with, and their extraction process is what sets them apart from the competition. They actually tell you how much seaweed is in the seaweed. Other products do not do that. And to me, it's all about building a program, something like this. We got a lot of farmers that are going into in-furrow and conceal and 2x2x2. I mean, the PTI crew is down there selling the 5-point touch right now. So it's all about banding nutrients in stages of when that crop grows. So I just want to highlight one trial here. Someone was getting on our webinar today just specifically for this one, so I have to take time to do this one. But this is comparing a nitrogen stabilizer, ammonium thiosulfate, and boost, and every combination of those three. And what was really interesting is you really zero in. If you want to take a picture of that before I switch it, you can. Again, we have this data available. Just find someone with a QLF shirt and we'll get it to you. Every time boost was added to those other ingredients, it was like pulling the team up. Boost was pulling the yield up. And this was just a 2x2 trial. The base fertility was a 50-50 blend of UAN and 1034-0. So let's go to the PTI farm and we're going to look at concealed dual band. You can see that there's really nice yields for only 150 to 177 pounds of nitrogen applied. But as we reduced nitrogen and made room for boost, we saw a nice 9-bushel swing. Jason is doing a good job putting this message out there. We are maybe the sugar product down there because he uses a lot of our products. I like what he says about reallocation and relay. What I just showed you was a really nice relay like this farmer here, comparing ourselves to maybe a very traditional program, you know, a healthy dose of polyphosphate, almost a half a gallon of zinc, and a PGR product. And then off the row, we're showing, you know, UAN and more APP and probably some ammonium thiosulfate. So that was planted on May 13th. Then we move over to the QLF program. We're showing 5 gallons of a 721.3 MKP with a pint of corn spike and a pint of Kelpak, and then that 2x2 placement, very similar to the other side, except we add boost to it. What's impressive about those two plants isn't that there's an advantage, it's that that plant from May 13th to June 6th is looking that way. The rest of this guy's program is pretty simple. He's got a pre-pass on nitrogen with boost, and he's got a side dress pass nitrogen with boost. A lot of benefits into this program. The nitrogen use efficiency is really about every dollar you invest and what you can recover. You can read this article if you'd like. With all this talk about using the right product at the right time and the right source, I think the thing we get wrong in farming is trying to decide what was the right rate. And a lot of our data shows sometimes that less is more and timing's everything and placement matters. Like this is where we're heading in farming, right? I just said right again. What about some other words like retention, recovery, recycling? That's kind of how I look at our words. Boost extends the life cycle of applied nitrogen biologically. It works with your biology. And we did some residue trials. You know, you think about all the stuff that's out there in your residue, how important it is to manage it. As you can show an improvement in 8-week span of 11% for all the fertilizer value that you can recover from last year's corn crop or the year before that. This residue trial was quite impressive. And again, I'm going to plug our newsletter. If you want to learn more, we actually have about 6 articles that are related to recycling residue, residue decomp. You know, I think I wrote one here that says nitrogen management really starts with how you manage your residue, okay? And don't treat it like trash. Let's turn it into cash. That was a catchy title, right? I'm just going to fast forward through this because I need to get to the next thing. Mineralization really is about timing and placement. This was an organic trial, but I like to show it quick because this is one of our oldest trials in Aurora, Nebraska at Real Farm Research, comparing an organic product called TerraFed to boosting UAN. What's really impressive about that isn't the 13 bushel, it's the 18 bushel at side dress with 3 gallons of boost and 7 gallons of UAN. This is irrigated corn in Nebraska, conventional corn. So we're going to do a residue trial. It's already begun. We're going to compare 3 different biologicals with and without boosts. We're going to dive deep into things like nutrient digestion, the genomics of our soil, try to identify what microorganisms are out there, and then tracking, you know, the respiration and biological activity. You know what I want to see from this trial? After I said all that, I want to see a line in the field. And I'm hoping we're going to get a line on our residue and our combine, and they're going to line up. But let's think about this for a second. A really seasoned agronomist has told us and taught us for years that you're going to have to sacrifice a little nitrogen to get your residue to decompose. And he calls it the carbon penalty, and I totally get where he's coming from. This guy can really sell ammonium sulfate in the fall, and there's advantages to doing that, okay? So here's what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to avoid the ugly corn. You don't want to be the farmer that has the ugly corn, you know, when it's V4 and it's the ugly corn versus that guy across the fence who's got some nice looking corn. How do you do that? Well, what happens is a lot of these nutrients that are needed to break down the residue are pulling away from that little seedling. Do you know what a simple fix for the ugly corn is? You guys might go out and spend your first $20 or $25 on a residue decomp program because they're selling them right now. Did you ever think about maybe giving it a little colostrum and maybe adding in furrow to your program? Because that's how I get out of the ugly corn phase. See, because if I can build a better plant, I can exude more sugars and create more biology that'll go to work on that residue. Sometimes we jump to the thing like, meltdown and more boost in nitrogen and stuff like that, but we forget that we're trying to avoid that right there. We can give it a better start. So there is a lot of opportunity in that carbon. It's not just a penalty. There's a lot of immobilized nutrients, and you need to get after it. This is the year to go get your nitrogen and your P and K out of that residue. Try to stimulate your biology across all that acre. We do really cool trials here at the ARC, and I don't have a lot of time to dive deep into this, but you can definitely get this information. The reason I want to show it is we got some producers out here that put huge shots of nitrogen, like my dad, because he's not going to side dress. And he puts a big shot of UAN, and he puts boostlet, of course, and he's got a residual program, And this is the kind of stuff that QF keeps bringing to the surface. Look at what we did with killing the cereal rye. Look what we did with no herbicide versus a big shot of UAN and ATS and herbicide, and then look what happened when we put the boost with it. That's not only improving the kill, that's helping with residue decomp. So treat the solution, not just the acre, right? This is on my farm, and I actually see a benefit of how boost will help that chemistry, like Akron, will run off the side of that jar. In fact, the molasses guy here is saying that my product will handle and flow better than that other thing on the left there. Boost drops pH. Jordan, over time. 2 minutes, okay. This is an important one. When you guys put boost in your UAN, what do you smell? Hopefully just molasses. It's not molasses that's covering the smell of the UAN. In fact, you don't need to trust your nose. We took care of this. Anthony has a machine back there. It maxes out at 100 parts per million. But when we drop boost in, compared to some other competitors trying to look like us, we took that smell away. We converted that nitrogen into a stable form. That's acid. That's not molasses and feeding bugs. That's powerful tank chemistry. So the acid that's in boost is put in there carefully. Right? So that's a key feature. What I say at the beginning, what it is, low pH and energy. So when should you put boost with your nitrogen? There's someone in it. There's actually several of you in attendance that do it all the time. That's good. So in Iowa, we're going to be heading back to Clarion again. We did a 3-year side dress trial, and we showed that even 100-pound split applied nitrogen could grow 220 bushel corn, but it was an 8 bushel advantage in that side dress pass with putting boost in. We also did a trial with lysimeter wells where we collected 2 summers of rainfall in the bottom of the lysimeter wells. And what do you know? We showed a significant reduction, 5 and 10 feet down in the bottom of those lysimeter wells where nitrogen wasn't running away. So the camera's not on me, but the crowd is here today. And this is where I explain that nitrogen moves in all directions. And primarily there's 2. And I just walked you through the 2 that we solved. The thing you need to do is think about how you can keep your nutrients cycling. How you can take the edge off the salt, how you can give your biology energy. This is okay now. We're working with the nitrogen cycle. And maybe we need to look at a nitrogen cycling program like this. This graphic that really does a good job of illustrating how important that microbial biomass is. There's so much intervention there. You don't want to end up over here in the toilet with leaching. You don't want to be, your cut off from your soils and have the worst type of nitrogen loss, which is, denitrification. We want to keep this open, breathing, and cycling. So we have some tests that were done before a lot of these tests came to market. This is an old trial in 2014, but from April to June, we showed a significant difference, even with a big shot of nitrogen put out there at 35 gallons with more nitrogen in your checking account, ready for withdrawal. Back in 1955, Lamar said that he grew 300 bushel corn. I believe him. I actually read this article the first time at the Commodity Classic. It never gets old. The scientists in the room said there's not enough daylight back then to grow a high yielding crop, and there's not enough carbon dioxide. Isn't that interesting with the times we're in right now? What do plants breathe? They breathe CO2, and where does that come from? That comes from increased biological activity. Or as the Solvita test, it's a burst of CO2. We can show you how our biological soup throws that off the charts. So just real quick here, here's a trial with a pre and a post, weed and feed and side dress, and we're doing the before and after measurements of the soil test. And you can see out on a field scale trial that where we put boost of the UAN, it was a big carbon dioxide burst. And not only did it separate itself pretty easily, it sustained itself. That's just indicated the biology is still working. Come back here and hit again that side dress, boom, another big burst. So Jerry Hatfield says, he said this, I'm not here to sell you Louisiana sugar and replace your Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa sugar. I am here to teach you how to use Boost so that you can make more of your Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa sugar. I'm looking at people in the crowd here, but some of you, wherever you live, we're here to help you make more sugar. And guys like Jerry Hatfield understands, like, think of us as a feed company too. Like, what do we create in the rumen? We create more microbial protein. Here's a scientist saying the same thing in the soils. You better hook it to something so it doesn't fly or leach away. And that's how we cycle nutrients. That's what Boost does. This was the start of our company, was performing with nitrogen. At the end of the day, your plants, if they're healthier, they'll share more energy through their roots. And if you think about this big picture, it's really about measuring biological activity. You don't need fancy tests for this. CO2 needs to cycle. And Boost keeps all those biological pathways open. Products like Kelpak enhance plant health and stress mitigation. That just adds to your portfolio of improving your odds of winning every time you go across your field. This is a good article. I encourage you to get it, but if you read it word for word, basically what I just talked about is all covered in that paragraph. Everything that I just outlined. And this was an article in the John Deere Furrow that said there certainly is something to sugar. In fact, the guy they interviewed in this was the guy that grew trees that he called soybeans. His name was Kip Colors. I remember you guys hearing about this guy. 3 to 4 pounds of sugar every time a sprayer moves across my property. Right? So there's something to it for sure. I know I'm getting to the end here, and I gotta stimulate your thinking a little bit and say, okay, you're gonna make some decisions on fertilizer every year you do, whether you're gonna use more or less or what kind. So ask yourself, are you moving in the right direction? Right? Right direction. I just said right again. It's just right. I think resiliency is a really good word. I think it is because even though we hit some low pricing and some high cost fertilizer, and it seems like they never match up, do they? Right? As a farmer, your soils need to be resilient. That's really what soil health should be. Like, you make a mistake and you tilled too wet or you planted too early. How good is the biological activity in your soil to give you that resiliency that you need? Right? Because you got to get across the whole farm. And sometimes it ain't across the time you want to be on, every acre. So the definition of resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. What Heino and Tim put together for you was a stress mitigation plan and a nutrient cycling plan. And it all drives that, doing all these things. So I got to say this real quick, checks all the boxes. This is a USDA program somebody brought to my attention years ago. Is this still in practice today? The 808 program. I mean, if they're basically selling Boost for me right here, So let's just kind of go through it together real quick. Using amendments derived from plant or animal residue to improve the physical, chemical, and biological properties of soil. You can touch, see, feel, smell what we just did there for you. Let's put it out there. Checks all the boxes. By the way, that was a quote from one of you guys. His name's Ben, actually. He's the guy that gets credit for that. Boost. It checks all the boxes. Let's go through them. Maintain and increase, improve soil organic matter, quantity, and quality. There's a lot more that I can uncover and unpack for you there, but check that box. Improving soil aggregate stability. A lot of times you can just dig roots and see it. Check that box. Improving the habitat for soil organisms. Guilty. Improving plant productivity and health. You wouldn't get yield if you didn't have plant health, and we've pretty much demonstrated multiple ways to get there, so check that box. Improving moisture management. Right? And then we want to get rid of these greenhouse gases, except CO2, right? We want to play in that respiration. that carbon cycle. We want our planet to breathe. Plants are what cycle nutrients and create oxygen for you and me. So in closing, you see these big bold letters. The screen is huge at the Agronomy Research Center. Those of you that are out there watching and listening on your laptops, this is a big poster right in front of you, right? So what do you think the most important words are on this poster? You know, I can be funny and say, what do you suppose the rate is per acre on that teaspoon? Right? It's not that we just boost plant health and reduce plant stress. It's the part where you look at the top. It's more than sugar. I want you to understand it today. Boost is more than sugar. And the part that you guys are working with us on, and why we do all this, is we can teach you how. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody sticking that out. I think we went over by a few minutes, got started a little late. One question. I'm not answering humic acid questions. Oh, sorry. Hit up the chat box. We'll try to answer all your questions. Would it be better to apply Kelpak by itself, or can it be blended with Boost prior to application? Now, who would ask a question like that? The purpose, are you talking about tank mixing order? I think I know who that is. The products play well together, no matter what order you mix them, but the purpose of putting a product like Boost, who has a lot of adjuvant characteristics like breaking surface tension, sticking to the leaf and holding droplets together, not drying out leaf, that is what really grew our connection with the Kelpak product as a foliar biostimulant. So yes, absolutely, any of our products, they go so well together. Any questions from this group here? Any data on applying Kelpak at reproductive stages? So I'm glad you asked, Chris, because there is some data on that. Definitely R1, R2, it works pretty much all the time. But what Heino and I are going to decide on here today, we have to make a decision because it's warm out there and they're going to start planting. We're going to do a trial on timing of Kelpak. We're going to do crazy things like apply it 4 times separately and 4 times together. And we're going to actually hit it pre-R1 on soybeans. There was some consensus from some people that told us, like, check it out before you get into R1. We want to really build that plant up. What are we trying to do? You heard all the talks on the flowers and setting the fruit, and it got me thinking, like, how could we put another bean per pod? Now, we got to keep that plant fed. Can't run out of groceries. And maybe we don't want it to be stressful when we spray it post-spray pass. What are you guys going to do to it when it's 3 trifoliates? 3 leaves of 3, you're going to go out there and nuke it? Because it might be determined in what kind of year it's going to have. And then when you set it up to actually get into reproduction, I think Heino and I laid out a pretty good program there. Now, you might argue that I'm not going to do 4 trips across my field. That's not priced for my dad. It's not an average price. It's a lot of trips, a lot of money. But some people are trying to grow 100 bushel beans. And they might find it worth their time to go out there and extra pass. So we're going to do that, Chris. We're going to show a research trial that had 6 treatments, and we're going to go multiple applications stacked up, and we're going to do them individually too. That's going to be done under irrigation in Nebraska. So sorry for you dryland farmers, we're not going to take chances with the weather for this one. We're going to go a lot of reps so we get good statistics. So that's something QF and Kelpak are working together on. Any more questions? Show of hands in this room here. How many people have used Kelpak or tried it? Yeah, how many years have you been using it? 1 and done? Gave up on it right away? There's been some testimonies from some of the people I'm looking at. And that's why we're growing. You know, we lead with Boost, but honestly, like, people are interested in products like this, and they've actually opened doors and relationships for people to look at QLF. So it's kind of a two-way street. It's funny how many times you guys will be like, oh, what's that? I want to look at that shiny seaweed extract biostimulant thing. And we're like, yeah, it really plays well with a company called QLF and Boost. It has put us on a lot of farms, honestly. Of all the seaweeds on the market today, I think you guys can appreciate what Heino showed you today. It's an honest product. It's been around for 47 years in 80 countries. He's been telling the same story. It must get old after a while. Just the same old one product. But that's the goal of this tour, is to give you guys some perspective on if you decide to choose a seaweed, we've got a good one for you, right? And the only place you can get it in North America is QLF, except for California. We've been sending leads their way too, but so we can partner with you guys. Thanks, everybody. Everybody go have a good lunch out there in the cyber world, and we're going to have a good lunch here at the ARC.